you have to run your race, and everyone has a different race that they're running. Everyone has different goals. We might all be on the same team, but everyone essentially has different goals. And it was just like when I was injured, man, I felt love and I felt the community and I felt the uplift, but it's also that goes away. And you have to really find out internally who you are and what you believe in. And you have to stick to it, man. You have to stick to your guns. And that's what I would tell people out there. If you're going through, injury or a death or, you're laid off or something like that, man, you just always, always, always have to remember who you are, what you believe in, what you're rooted in.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Modern Man Podcast, where we connect men in pursuit of their potential. Join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. If you're ready to take your personal and professional growth to the next level, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to check out the Noble Knights Mastermind group, where you will find a group of men in the support, the accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to improve themselves and elevate their capacity for life. I'm excited to get wind in our sails today. It is my pleasure out of Greenville, South Carolina, to introduce Clemson baseball alum, Grant Cox, on the podcast. Grant, thanks for being on, man.
I appreciate you having me, brother. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and man, I'm glad we're on here. I appreciate you having me.
Likewise, man. And before we jump into this conversation, which I know is going to be a great one, I want to make sure that I step out of the way, give the audience and the guest a chance to get acquainted. So I'm going to give you the microphone, give you the stage, and let you talk to the people really quick. Tell them who you are, what you do, and we can kind of unpack more of your story.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate it. Like you said, man, I'm Grant, Greenville, born and raised, Clemson baseball alum. I was there from 16 to 19. Citadel grad soon. I always loved the Citadel. A lot of my friends were cadets. A lot of my best friends were cadets, so they went through kind of the process there. I did not. So I graduated my MBA here in about 3 weeks ish. So pray for me.
I got you.
Yeah, man. Huge man of faith. I got all my family here in Greenville. My girlfriend has all of her family here in Greenville. So we're full, man. We're blessed. And yeah, just excited to chat with you, excited to share, our hearts together. And, hopefully whoever listens to this, hopefully we make them better, inspire them in some way. That's inspire each other. That's what it's all about. So I'm grateful to be here.
Absolutely, man. I'm going to jump in head first on the deep end, if you don't mind.
Let's go. I'm ready, man.
What defines you?
Man, I would say, my faith. Like, I hope people, when they see me, they can see like kind of my testimony and what I've been through in my life and what our family's been through in our life, and understand that there is hope, that there is faith. Like I always want my name to come up in someone's testimony. It might be one person, it might be 100 people, I don't know, but just one person, like, hey, Grant Cox, he changed my perspective. He changed my life with not how he handled the good, but how he handled the bad, and kind of turned tragedy into triumph. And yeah, man, for my name to come up in someone's testimony, for my girlfriend to think the world of me, for my family to be proud of me, that's what matters most to me, man. That's what defines me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I've chased the dollar, I've chased women, I've chased a lot of vices in life, and some of the things that fill my cup up the most is when I could look at my wife and know that she's taken care of and happy and safe, right? And looking at my family and the love that they have around me. I mean, that's better than any paycheck that anyone can ever receive. And you mentioned the ups and the downs. And I want to talk about, I guess, kind of life being a roller coaster, that ride up your lifelong dream, running onto Doug Kingsmore Stadium. What was the inception of that, man? What was the inception of the dream, and I guess the pursuit of that dream and how it all turned out?
Yeah, man. Well, I was born in 96 and the pursuit started in 92. So my dad, and I say that for this, my dad had season tickets at Clemson baseball ever since 1992. And so I literally 1 years old, my dad, he always tells people this, but he literally changed my diaper in the bathrooms at Doug Kingsmore Stadium, and we would go back out there. He had seats right behind home plate, and I mean, when they were home, man, like, when they had a home series, we were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We were there Saturday, Sunday. It just kind of just depended on what we were doing, but the whole dream, the whole goal started when I say like I'm a true Clemson fan. Like I had no other choice, man. And when and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it. So that dream started when I was little, literally getting my diaper changed in the bathroom to watching. My favorite player was Khalil Green. That's who I idolized. He was a shortstop as well, and I was just chasing him, man. That's what I wanted to be like. I wanted to literally run between those white lines and put on. And it started. I would say, I had a kickstart with baseball, probably 4 years old. And it was all I cared about, man. Not all I cared about, but I was obsessed with it. And that's kind of what I tell people now is for people to get to a certain place, for you to really accomplish that dream, you have to be obsessed with it, especially the game of baseball that it's such a game of failure. It's such a game of like, there's not any other sport to where if you succeed 30% of the time, you're considered a Hall of Famer. You're considered a great.
Yeah.
You have a 30% field goal percentage in basketball or 30% passing percentage in football. Like you're probably not playing. You're probably not going to play. You might not even be there. So baseball has its ups and downs, man. I'm so grateful for the highs, the lows, but it was a journey, a good journey for the most part to get there, man. So it was a dream come true, but it took a lot.
Quick tangent. What just for any nuggets, any guys watching right now, because I know a few baseball players who are good friends in my life, and they all have the same type of approach to life. It's kind of interesting. You're all very particular about like how things are done and by the book. And I think there's a utility to that. I feel like that utility applies to baseball, but what was it about baseball that taught you about failure and how to approach life?
Man, I would say that in baseball for me, it was I knew, especially like, and this was when I was older, when I was, when I was younger, even like middle school, high school, if I didn't get like 2 hits a game, I was just like, what am I doing? What's going on? You know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
had the expectations, even summer ball, the expectations I put on myself were were far higher than anybody put on me. Like, I think I was my hardest critic. I was, I feel like I held myself accountable throughout everything. And, I was obsessed. So I think I found that in the work that I was putting in, and the faith that I did have, I was like, man, I guess the Lord just didn't want me to have 2 hits today because I knew I was putting in the work. So my backbone was the work that I was putting into the game. I knew that if I went over 4, that it wasn't going to be because I wasn't working. And I think that's part of life. Like if something's not going right, even in work, relationships, it's the work you put in. And I know you know this, and a lot of people know this, but work is work. And sometimes it's harder than on some days. So it's important to just keep going, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you got to put in the work. And I've been saying this saying for a while, even if they're not there to see the work, they're going to see the work. It
Yeah,
just might not look like work. It might look like ease to them.
absolutely. I agree with that. Absolutely, man.
So what was the feeling like when you finally ran out to the stadium? And I want to mention that without overlapping the fact of turning down the chance to play for the Cincinnati Reds
Yeah.
versus going out to run on that field for Clemson.
Yeah.
What was it like finally running out there? And then even take us back to, the decision to turn down that opportunity to stick with your dream.
Yeah. No, man. Yeah, running out there, I remember I ran out there. It was my first time. Like, and we ran out there, just like in our shorts. And like when we first got there, we'd go play catch. But when we my first run out there was, you always have inner squads, and it's like orange versus purple. And that's where like you're really trying to earn your spot. You play like 40 games against each other in the fall. And then, season starts, in the February timeframe. So like the first time you run out there, man, it's just like, I remember sitting at shortstop and I was like, it was an inter squad game. And I think for all of the freshmen, it was like, this is our first time putting on the stripes and kind of being a part of this dream, being a part of Clemson, although you're playing amongst each other. And I remember just sitting out there like, and I vaguely remember, I know exactly where my dad's seats were. And I was just like standing at shortstop, looking at those seats, knowing that like I used to sit there and dream about being where I'm standing right now. And it was just like, I don't know, man. It just kind of overwhelmed me for a second. I definitely had the jitters in a way. And but man, it was fun. I miss it. And then going back to high school, it was such a crazy process because like I tell people all the time that are younger, that are going through the high school stuff, that are going through, college recruitment, that are thinking about signing with an advisor, just in high school, especially when the draft and stuff is going on. My thing, I'll say this before I kind of touch on it, but my mom and dad never missed a game. They never missed my brother. My grandparents, they never missed a game. So I wanted to play somewhere close by. This was like kind of the essential decision. I wanted to play somewhere close by where they could watch me play in my dream. And so that's why, Clemson was the dream, but that's why I kind of turned, down, the Reds. And it was tough because at a certain point you're like, man, I don't want to go to college. Like, why would I go to college and sit in the classroom and then play? But at the end of the day, it is a business. And essentially we did what was best for us, which was fulfilling our dream. And then, hopefully 3 years later, just running it back, just doing it again. So it's definitely a lot goes into it, especially like family. The Reds came and visited my home. My mom cooked, them dinner, and it was like the regional scout, the area scout, the regional world, like the Southeast director. So it's different, man. It was a different process, but it was a process that I'm glad I went through. But man, I know I'm not the type of person that lives with any kind of regret because it was a lifelong dream.
Yeah. And you fulfill that dream. And I know we mentioned the roller coaster ride, the up and up and up. And there are downturns to life. What was the first, I guess, drop that hit for you after the realization of that dream?
Yeah, man. It was it's one of those things where injury is sometimes inevitable in sport. And especially with how you play. I was a very I threw my body wherever to make something happen, to make a play, to do this, to do that.
You got to sacrifice the body.
Yeah, I was that guy, man. Like truly I was that guy. And that's just how I played, man. That's how I was wired. I would run through a fence, I would run over a fence, I would run over somebody. It's just how I was. That was my mindset. And really my first down, as you mentioned, was You mentioned up, up, up. That was kind of my freshman year. I was playing really well and I was, slated to start as a true freshman. And then, I dive for a ball and, I feel something in my right shoulder and I didn't say anything for probably 2 weeks, just kept playing because I know something was wrong. Like this has never happened. And I knew something was up and I was starting and we had like maybe a month left. And then it got to where I couldn't throw a baseball like 10 yards, 15 yards in front of me. And so I was just like, my goodness. And so I ended up having labral surgery. So I had my shoulder repaired. That was my freshman year. And it took, 6 months or so to recover from that. And then we ended up having rehab stints in summer ball with Lexington County Blowfish down, like 2 hours below me. But that was my first real down, man. I'd never had surgery before like that. So it was eye-opening. It was eye-opening for sure.
How'd you handle that?
Man, it was, I might be saying this too early, but I was I knew I was working hard. I knew that I was doing the right things to put myself in a position to start. And this was just like a God thing. It was, this was not meant to happen for me. You have to almost convince yourself from that or you'll drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
And I remember being out of surgery. So shoulder surgery is tough because literally you have this huge pad that's like up underneath your arm and like you're sitting literally like this and you can't lay down when you sleep. You literally have to sit upright. You have to sleep upright. Like you're sleeping in a chair. And I just remember waking up, man, and I was kind of going through it. And once I kind of got, clarity and a peace of mind, I remember I was at my parents' house after post-surgery, and it was like we were like 2 days out. And my mom came in the room. She was like, "How are you feeling?" It's like, "I'm good." And I kind of just sat there and we were just kind of having a heart to heart. And I was like, "Well, I'm just glad that this happened to me and not anybody else." Like I was like, "I'm glad this was me and not one of my teammates." That was how I felt about it. I don't know why. I know I love my teammates. I know I was willing to do whatever for anybody. But that just kind of came over me. That was my perspective. And I kind of carried that throughout every surgery, which is a lot. I kind of just carried that throughout.
Do you think that's well, I'll ask it this way. Do you identify yourself internally as a leader?
I do.
Yeah. Because that's something like a leader would say is, like the take the arrows type thing, right? Like the leader's job is to take the arrows, and if any harm is going to come to the team, we take it because we identify that I could probably handle. I would rather I handle this than this mess somebody else up or derail them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I felt, man. Truly, all the way through.
Now the arrows didn't stop coming though, did they, man?
No.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Thayton here, host of the Modern Man Podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals.
Check out themodernmanpodcast.com.
No, man. I think the arrows were getting sharper as life went on. Like it was like this one was kind of dull, and then it was just like I was just getting. I don't know if you've ever seen this picture, but it's like a wolf, and he's just kind of sitting there, and he just has 20 arrows in him, and then has like families right on the other side of him. It's like one side's just blood, and then his family's safe on the other side. So yeah, man, they didn't stop. They were it seemed as if they were coming in like threes over and over and over again.
what were the ones that I guess stung the most? What was, I guess, in the process, what I'm trying to think about is, for a lot of times, for a lot of us, we go through hard times, and we get to a point where we're like, man, this has to end sometime soon, right? Like this, there has to be a light at the end of this tunnel. Like this can't be the quote unquote new norm, because like setbacks happen, and I think people who aren't too attuned to it are like, oh man, that's life. And it's like, no, you don't want to hear that when you're kind of in the brunt of the storm. That's life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how'd you navigate those arrows as they started coming, and like, what were the ones that I guess were the sharpest, that hit the deepest?
Yeah, man. I mean, once again, I had good people around me. And that helped. But, also, it was just me going to bed at night. It was just me waking up in the morning. So I had all these thoughts, just especially, you're doing everything you can after an injury. Any athlete, any person, hopefully, is doing it, everything they can after an injury to get back better, to become better. Obviously it's going to mold you a certain way, and it's going to callous you a certain way mentally. But physically, you're like, am I going to be the same? Is this going to be the same? Is this like, what is it going to be? It's almost inevitable that you think that way. So my goal, just right after shoulder surgery, was just, I'm going to be stronger than I've ever been. I'm going to be the fastest person, this, that. I'm going to come back stronger. And I did. There was struggles in the process, like your shoulder swells, you start playing again, it's super uncomfortable, it gets tight, you dive for another ball, and it kind of just, it almost feels like something's wrong again, but it's not. It's just you getting used to kind of this, like, it's still, even though it's a 6-month recovery and you're fully back, man, it takes a year plus for you to really feel like comfortable with it. That's every person, that's everybody. But to answer, man, I had that surgery. I had I started to feel, we were doing exercises in Jervy Meadows. And if you're Clemson people, you might know what I'm talking about. The softball field's actually there now. But it wasn't there. It was just flat land when I was there. And we worked out there a lot. We did a lot of agility stuff, a lot of one-legged hops, and stuff like that, man. Normal stuff that we're used to. And my roommate was behind me at the time, and we were doing this like one-legged hop drill. I never will forget this. It's vivid. And, he heard it. He heard something in my leg. I felt it. I didn't hear it, but he heard it. He was like, what was that? And I was just kind of like walking. Once again, I just didn't say anything, but I knew something happened. I know something. I knew it did. So I start kind of walking. They're like, you good? I was like, I'm good. And I was just kind of like walking it off. And I was kind of feeling up my leg to see if it was like, I didn't know if I tore my Achilles, which I didn't. But I just didn't know. It sounded like that. And so, we get to the end of our workout and we're running hills and all that kind of stuff. And then a person's walking behind me and they're like, Grant, are you good? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I turn around. I'm like, yeah, why? And through like my baseball sock and my pants, which unfortunately Clemson's pants were like hella tight. So it wasn't like anything crazy, but my leg was that swollen. They saw the bottom of my leg. That's how swollen it was. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I ended up getting about a 9-ounce mass removed from my leg. And, it was tested. Luckily it was benign. We didn't know, but we were lucky in that fact. We just weren't sure what it was, but a 9-ounce mass, something bigger, probably bigger than your fist, gets removed from your leg, man. It's different. That's when the shoulder surgery was like, oh, in my head, it was like, it was just a shoulder surgery. And this all kind of happens and you get diagnosed and you have surgery. You don't really know what the future is going to look like. There's people telling you like, hey, you'll be back in this, you'll be back in that. But it's like me and you talked during the this was a 9-ounce mass removed from your leg. And like me and you talked, there was no literature about this. There was no real recovery. And I'll tell you this, what's eye-opening about this injury for everyone is I would be doing rehab at ATI in Greenville, and I was doing rehab in Clemson as well. I would show up for rehab and I would go sit on the table. We would start just with like small stretches, get loose. And there would be like 3 white coats around me, like 3 grown people, men, women, white coats. And I would kind of sit there, kind of land and like peek at their name, because you know their name and usually who they're with is right here. Man, it was people from it was doctors from like DC, doctors in Baltimore, Chicago. They had heard about this surgery. They had heard about this injury, and they were coming to write their own literature about it. Just through my recovery, just how I was recovering. Like they were staying in Greenville, coming with me all week, 5 days in a row, and then kind of making an analysis about what I was like during this stage of the rehab process for this injury. So that's kind of what opened my eyes. Yeah, as far as how
a case study. And
exactly. Like I was getting a case study right there.
wow.
That kind of opened my eyes with how rare it was, because it truly was. Like the doctor always told me, he was like, Grant, if you hear about this injury or this kind of surgery again, I need you to call me. He said, because you hear about it again. And yeah, man, that was rough. And then, I could just keep going. I could probably talk about this for an hour. Then I had, hip surgery at 19 years old. And, before that, and this is kind of when it does get deep, Ted, is when you talk about, which ones hurt the most as far as arrows. As you're rehabbing for this mass, being removed from your leg, it's already tough, because like the lows are low and the highs, there are barely any in that process. As you're going through that process, I was really struggling, just getting back to normal. I lost feeling in my kind of left part of my leg, like below the knee on my inner side of my right leg. I lost feeling in my toes. I still don't have feeling back in my toes. So like a bunch of things again were kind of just going on from this mass being removed. And about, I would say 6 months or so after the surgery, we were tested for not compartment syndrome, but chronic exertional compartment syndrome, CECS, which is, way more detrimental than compartment syndrome is a big deal. It's a big deal as a whole. But when you have chronic exertional compartment syndrome, meaning you've had it for a while, but it's just now being diagnosed, that's when things get pretty bad. And that was on February 14th that I was diagnosed with chronic exertional compartment syndrome. And the way they do it, they have a big gauge, like literally they have to grip this gauge like this and has a needle, and they kind of stick it in your leg. And then if you're above, as far as pressure wise, so it's a lot of pressure internally that pushes outwardly. And chronic exertional is kind of bad because it pushes on your nerves, it pushes on your arteries, it pushes on your muscles. And so that's why my feeling was being shut down. And once they stick this gauge in you, if you're above like a 0.30, you have it. Like you have compartment syndrome, you're going to have another big surgery. And mine was like, I looked down at it and it was over 0.75. That's how bad mine was.
Dang.
And so we knew when we were diagnosed with that playing was going to be playing baseball again was, the discussion was on the table, is if we were going to or not. Of course, in my mind, I'm like, I'm never going to stop. I don't care if I have one leg.
Yeah.
But the NCAA's mind and the ACC's mind and Clemson's mind, it's a little bit different. So I was medically disqualified by the NCAA, and that was my career. I have no more eligibility. My career's done. I think I'm 20. And that was on February 14th in 2018. So we understand that we get diagnosed with that, disqualified by noon on February 14th. And I go back to Clemson, I talk to my team, and everyone was kind of involved with my injuries and stuff like that, but they didn't know it was like this. And what I realized is no one really knows how bad it is until you hit them with that news. And, I go to practice. I didn't practice, obviously, but I was at practice. And then I get back to my phone and I have tons of missed calls from my dad, my mom, my brother, family. And I'm like, what is going on? And that was where Luke, there was a shooting at Parkland, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida. And that was where my cousin, Luke Hoyer, he was one of the 17 victims killed that day. And to put it in perspective, that's my mom's sister's youngest son. That was her youngest of 3. He was 15 when he was killed. And so you take, everything you've worked for that we kind of talked about on the beginning of this podcast, and it's all crumbled in one day. Then you take, one of your family members being murdered. And that happens the second half of the day. So it made me realize how little baseball is and how big family and life is. It completely switched my perspective. And honestly, man, between, you and I know people will listen to this, I don't know if it would have changed if that didn't happen, to be real with you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It completely changed my life. And it completely changed my family's life. Obviously, we still deal with it. So that was rough, man. That was rough.
I can imagine, man. And I appreciate you sharing that with us and going there, because I know it could be hard to relive. And I mean, it's just, how do you pick up the pieces from that? And I know you mentioned you still deal with it. I can only imagine. What does it look like, taking those worn out tools and starting to build again?
No, man, and that's such a great question. You rely on family, you lean on each other, your boys, your friends that you have, like Chandler, my girlfriend. I lean on her so much. And she's, she's my rock. And I wish she was with me when that did happen. We just didn't know each other yet. I believe she would have been there, but I wish I had someone like her to just talk to just lean on. Because as men, inevitably, we kind of just bottle it up. We don't necessarily express it. And that's how my dad is. That's how my brother is, which is okay. And that's how maybe you are. And I was like that for a little bit. I still am in certain ways, but
yeah,
man, it's gradual. I'm still trying to figure that out, man. Just with how everything happened, it just seemed like my whole life in one day just went. And, once again, it's me sleeping by myself. It's me waking up. Those thoughts are still, there's just a million things going through my head.
Who'd you talk to at the time?
Man, I talked to, obviously I talk to family a lot. I talk to, and we're close anyway. But I talk to mom, dad, talk to, obviously Abby and Jake, who are Luke's older brother and sister. Talk to them a lot throughout that process. And, my boys that were at Clemson, like Jake Higginbotham, I know Kiera Meredith was there, Alex Schnell, Patrick Cromwell, Chris Williams, Jordan, Higgy. They were all there for me, man. And there's more than that. But it's, yeah, man, it almost, it was rough. It was rough. Still is.
When I went on your page, and one of the things I saw, one of the top things you mentioned was not taking things for granted and living with gratitude. How do you put that into action each day?
I think it's everyone talks about it. Everyone talks about, today's a new day. We need to be grateful for today because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I live that. And I say that because, and you know what? That's not true. I do my best to live it. I still make mistakes. I still kind of honestly, I'm a human being. I do take things for granted sometimes that I shouldn't. And then I realize it and I'm like, I need to do better. I'm constantly, carving myself and becoming better. At least, I try to, but man, when something like that happens and it rattles your whole world, you appreciate the small things. It doesn't take much it doesn't take much to really set you on fire. It doesn't take much to grow, something in you, even when it's like small things, man. Like when it comes to, enjoying just family, being off your phone, when it comes to working out, when it comes to this, to that. Like me, like when I work out, I do like sets of 3 or 4, but my reps are at 17. I'll always do 17 push-ups. I'll always do this. I always do that. So I do my best to honor.
Why 17?
The 17 that were killed, and I just honor them in that way. And I have tattoos, man, and I got Luke, and honestly, it's people that have passed away in my life, and I have the number 17, and it's kind of in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas colors, which is kind of like a black and maroon-ish, not like Carolina maroon, but like a little lighter, a little better looking. And people ask me all the time, they're like, was that your jersey number? And I'm like, no. And, it's just informing people, about, like, I enjoy telling people about Luke, telling them how he is. I used to struggle with it, but it's you feel him each day. You do your best each day to, he's looking down. He wouldn't want us to take anything for granted. So you do your best, man.
If you wouldn't mind, what's a fond memory of Luke you think everyone would love to hear?
Man, that man, he was hilarious. I'll tell you one. So I'm competitive, man. Like, I don't like losing anything. Like, it can be a painting contest. It can be decorating a tree. It can be running. Like, something will happen. I'll be the guy that pulls his hamstring. I think I was probably 17, and I thought like I had life figured out. I thought I was a man. And Luke liked basketball. He played basketball and football. Those were kind of his things. And at the time, before Luke passed away, he was just as tall as me. He's 15 and I was 20, and he was just as tall as I am, like 5'10", 5'11". And, you could tell he was getting, he was a little bit shorter than me, and we would play basketball. We play horse, and we were down there one time, man, and his family had like this courtyard, and it was like, they lived down in South Florida. So they had like the pool, the courtyard, and then like the net, the screen. And we were down there, man. We were playing till like 11, and he beat me like 11-7. I never will forget. It was 11-7.
Oh man.
And I was like, did you say we're playing to 15? And I kept pushing the score. I kept pushing, like, I thought, oh, we were playing to 11. He was like, I was like, oh, we're playing to 15. He was like, no, it was 11. He was like, we always play to 11. I was like, I thought you said 15. And I kept trying to push the number. And man, I was so mad. Like, I was so mad. I'm telling you, it almost ruined my trip. It was like once I got there. But he whooped me, man. And he continued to whoop me. So that was a fun memory, even though I was mad. It makes me laugh now, man. I find joy in it now.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, man. How can we take the advice from you and, love people while they're here, not when they're gone?
Man, I think it's to one word to sum it all, man, is forgiveness. I think forgiveness it's known, and people do their best, but a lot of people hold a grudge. A lot of people judge people by things they don't know, and by things that, whether it be, it's not true, it's not this, they don't truly know the authentic person. And it starts with forgiveness. I think if you're able to forgive, and we're forgiven, every day we pray to be forgiven. And I think if we can just take that and forgive the people around us, even if it's stuff that we don't understand, it sets I post it, I tell it all the time. Set yourself free. And that's forgiving people. Don't hold on to it. And I think that's where it starts. So
Mm.
loving people while they're here, man, because it's cliche, but you truly never know. That was the last thing that we thought was ever going to happen to us. And it did happen to us. And so I know what it's like I wish I would have reached out to Luke more. I wish I would have texted him more. I wish I would have spent more kind of intimate, like brother, time with him when I was with him. Um, and so I'm a lover. Like I fight for what I believe in. I fight for the truth, but I also am a huge lover, man. And I forgive people. I think it's so important for yourself and for them, man, because
Yeah.
we're human. I mean, we make mistakes. We're not perfect, but I think if you can forgive people, and that ties just right into loving them while they're here, man. We're all not going to be the same. We're all not going to be what people want us to be, but we're going to be ourselves. And so it's important to love people for who they are and love them while they're here, man. And I think it starts with, to be able to do that, man, you got to have a clean heart, and forgiveness is the root of it.
Yeah. Coming up on some of our time, the last couple of questions in the podcast, you mentioned, you're a lover, you're gonna, fight for what you believe in. And we talked about it a little bit before hitting record about how sometimes, doing what's right isn't always popular. Fighting for what you believe in might not always be the optics of the approach might not always be well received by others. How is that proven to be another, I guess, another learning point in your life?
Yeah, man. And it, it's we all make mistakes, and we all, do our best in everything that we do. It's very human like. And matter of fact, the people that I love the most are, under construction. They're constantly under construction. They're constantly working on themselves. They're never satisfied. And that as a whole I love. But when it comes to, you know, even when it comes to, back to my last point, setting yourself free, I think it starts with the truth. And you see yourself in the morning, you see yourself in the mirror every morning, every night, every time you look at yourself, you see yourself in the car, you see yourself. So it's important to be proud of that, but it's also important to live your truth and also fight for what you believe in. And it was just like we were talking in the pre, it was, you add all the stuff with injury, with this, with another injury, with Luke, with another one of my teammates passing away at Clemson, with two of my mentors. One was my hitting coach since I was sixth grade. They pass away. You take all this, man. So it causes you to be broken in ways. And then, back in 2019, my brother and I were, falsely arrested for doing what anybody would do, but also doing the right thing and what we were raised on, which was to protect family, protect women, and make sure the people around you are safe. And that was something, a headline like ex Clemson baseball player, da 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 da, and it was just so vicious, man, and it was so just uncalled for and ugly and nasty and something that I would never do. And then you get brought out like that. So then what happens? And so, we knew the truth. We fought for the truth. We're still fighting for the truth. And that's something you have to stand on. Everyone tells you to stand on something. Or me and Trey, me and my brother, when we were kind of just going through all that stuff, man, and we have a quote on our bracelet, and it says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And we kind of kept that. But we kind of kept that as our thing. Like, hey, man, we stood for the right thing. You protected your girlfriend. I protected you. We protected each other. We were just trying to protect everybody. And then we kind of get thrown under. And, like we talked before, we're not the first ones, man. It happens. It happens a lot. But it's just like I told you too, man. It's all about the truth, but it's all about forgiveness too. Like, what happened, I forgive, and I have a clean clean slate, clean heart, and that's what it's all about, is chasing your truth.
Absolutely, man. I want to make sure our audience can continue to follow you, root for you, and see you um continue to triumph over those arrows, over those downs, and get that inspiration from your testimony to help them with theirs. How can they follow, contact, and connect?
Yeah, man. Instagram is great. I'm always like I get on Instagram. I care about connecting with people. Um, Grant Coxey, Coxyy is my name on Instagram, and reach out to me there, and we can. I love connecting with people. I love chatting with people. I love hearing people's story. I love telling my testimony as well. Because like we said, if one person can be like, man, I heard what Ted said, I heard what Grant said, and it impacted me. That's what's the most important, especially nowadays, man. We need to lift each other up more.
I agree, brother. I agree, and I can't resonate with that more. And that's why I do the podcast, right? And it's to
Right,
lift each
man.
other up, and the men listening, we're here to lift you up as well. I'll have that link and your website and all that in the show notes for folks to open that up and just get right to some of your sources. And the last question, I feel like we might have already touched on it during the episode, but just an opportunity to address it directly. I always ask this, and it's, what is something that you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Um, hmm, that's that's a good question, man. I feel like I could go like a few routes with this, but I would say for me, to answer that, I would say that, for on a personal note, that when you have to run your race, and everyone has a different race that they're running. Everyone has different goals. We might all be on the same team, but everyone essentially has different goals. And it was just like when I was injured, man, I felt love, and I felt the community, and I felt the uplift, but it's also that goes away. And you have to really find out internally who you are and what you believe in, and you have to stick to it, man. You have to stick to your guns, and that's what I would tell people out there. If you're going through you know injury or a death, or you're laid off or something like that, man, you just always have to remember who you are, what you believe in, what you're rooted in. And the person that you're next to, you never know what they're going through. You may think but you really don't. And to carry your life that way, and you know, yeah, I'll say it again, man. If I can change one person's life with me being vulnerable, it's important. It's
Yeah.
important. That's when it comes out. So I would say, just to tie it in, injury, telling your story, it's important. You never know what someone's going through, but also, you know, what everyone's been through is important. It deserves to be shared. You never know who you're going to teach. You never know who is going to feel your love and who's going to need it, man. Because it is needed.
Mhm.
And that's something I try to just, keep at the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate that. Out of Greenville, South Carolina, Clemson baseball alum, Grant Cox. Thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. I really do, brother. This was great. Thank you.
Likewise, man. No, thank you. No, I appreciate it. And I'm going to share a couple gems really quick that you left along the way. When they see me, see my testimony, right? A lot of us tend to hide the things that we go through, especially as men. I mentioned the armor analogy, the metaphor of we try and wear a clean sheet of armor, but a clean sheet of armor has never been to battle. So when you don't show your vulnerabilities, nobody really sees the battles that you've been through. You have to be obsessed, whatever that dream, that goal, that audacious goal that you set for yourself. In order to achieve that greatness, a lot of times it will take your obsession, especially if it's a competitive arena in which other people are in. Am I going to be the same? The thought process after an injury. Also being able to put the work in. I love it when Grant said the result of the game, if I went 0 for 4, it wasn't because of my work, but the work was there. Much like a guest prior to on the podcast way back. I think you'll like this, Grant. He says, your efforts and your dedication belongs to you. The outcome and the results belong to God. All we can do is put in the work. Lean on your support system. When you start taking the arrows, if you're a leader in your family, a leader in your group, a leader on your team, if you're just a leader of your own life, you will take arrows. And when that happens, who are you going to lean on? What is your support system? And have you set that up? Those thoughts, understanding when you're going to bed alone, when you are by yourself, those thoughts, you want to pay attention to them, but don't let them run wild. Talk to someone, share with somebody, focusing on forgiveness, appreciating the little things, remembering to love the folks while they're here, give them the flowers, and also understand, hey, we're all under construction. I'm a work in progress myself. I'm still putting things together. And if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Find out who you are and what you believe and continue to stick to it. Guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of this podcast. Grant, thank you again. We appreciate it, brother. And for anybody who enjoyed this episode, the best compliment you can give us is by hitting that like button, that share button to share it with somebody you know can get value from it as well. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get a new episode each and every single week. And leave us a rating to let us know how we're doing. And it really helps the algorithm, helps us out too, so we can keep this podcast going and sharing these fantastic stories with you. And as we always say at the end of the episode, guys, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job.